Welcome to Factorio Reverse Megabase. My name is Nilaus and this is, well, it is the Reverse Megabase. And it is done reversing and now it's just a good old regular Megabase. And this is a base review of my own base. So I'll be scrutinizing my decisions and designs in, and just basically reviewing it like it was any other base and just providing feedback to myself and some of the learnings from this base, and so that we can all sort of we can say proper goodbye to this base and just figure out what we did right and what we did right and what we did wrong. That's a typical manager, right? No, what I did right and what we did wrong. That's how it goes. Now it's a super awesome base, and there's been a lot of evolution as well in this base and how the different things were set. Let's start. If you are unfamiliar with this base, let's look all the way out and look at the overall architecture of this. So the overall architecture is that we have in the middle at the core, we have our science facility. This is performing 3,000 or consuming 3,000 science per second, minute, 3,000 science per minute. So yes, megabasing. And then we have these radial structures here, each of them providing a single science inbound. So let's start with the simplest one. We have the red science, we have greens up here. They're sort of kind of pushed in between some other ones. So we have blue, and we have then yellow, and then we have purple, and we have the space science here, and then we have the military at the end. And the last leg of this is the nuclear power facility. So what I'm going to do is we are going to look at the production, we're going to look at logistics, we're going to look at power, we're going to look at the performance, and we're going to take a look at the lessons learned. So that's going to be the structure for this and for all other base reviews that I do, so that we sort of have a common structure. First, of course we go through the overall design. The overall design is, well, everything is transported by trains. I have no intersecting train lines, and that means that what we have in here is sort of coming in from each location. And what you get here, let's take the yellow sign of the red science first. Let's see if I can actually rock up there. No, it's gonna be, yeah. So here we're looking at the red science. Colors, man, colors. The red science, and this is a special way of doing it where I'm bringing in iron from one side, copper from another side on 2 trains, single-headed or single direction. And they go in here, unload, and come into this location, gets turned into gears, and then goes all the way up. And then we're going to build it here along with the train coming in. And we don't have a train coming in because they're both waiting at the science facility. That's kind of where we want to have them. So if we bring one of these trains home, then we should be able to see when it comes in how it actually operates. Because most of the time there will be one loading and one unloading, and then the loading one should be filling up faster than the unloading can take place. But I'm then bringing the raw resources in from out here from the octagon. That's the general design principle. Let's have a look at the train now coming in. These trains, they do take a lot of time to get from one location to the next. So now we're actually just getting in here and just topping it up. So you can see stuff coming in, iron is being consumed, copper is being consumed, getting in here. Very low quantities actually for 3,000 science per minute. But it works. And then we have these locations. They are simple setup. They all are set up as iron 1. And then they're using train limits to say, I want 2 trains coming in here. One train unloading and 1 train waiting. This is what we can see here. There's 1 train unloading and there's another train waiting in the wings. So that's basically the overall structure. If we continue to move outwards and look at the outer structure here, then as we go out to the outer ring, let me just get out to the outer ring. So at this outer ring, we have 2 tracks going north and 2 tracks going south, and they are actually, this is one of the things that I'm super happy about. It was something I wanted to try, and I actually think it's a really good idea that I would recommend moving forward. There are some good ideas and some bad ideas here, but this is one of the good ones, except that it's hard to keep track of. So you can see that the outer lane here is the only thing that can go in here, together with the, well, now as you say outer from the perspective of the octagon, this one can go out here. So only this can go in and this can go in. And when it comes out from here, I'm always doing right-hand drive, it can only go to the inner lane or to the inner lane. What I'm going to have decided is that the outer lanes here and here are reserved for empty trains. and the inner lanes are reserved for full trains. That means there's going to be very minimal congestion. The trains will not switch between the tracks at all. They will go when they go in here. If it's a full train, it'll go on the inside lane. If it's an empty train, it'll go on the outside lane. See, full train, inside lane. We can we then have some mining outpost out here, or not just mining, but also just smelting facilities. And we have a number of these. These are all modularly built so that I can use them. Oh, why did I choose the most boring one? I'm going to choose another one. This one is less boring. So we have a smelting location, again filling up with trains, 216-2 trains. And if we just cut through here, we can see we have a smelting column set up that has 16 wide. So basically, whenever I build something, I say how many of these modules do I need to feed the entire base, and then we have something in here. Now this is one of the things where, if we come back to lessons learned, this is not perfect. It's far from perfect, but the idea here is that this part, and probably not deconstruct though, let's do copies. This part is modular. And you will see that that exists here as well. Here. 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 And that's the iron and copper, I think. Yes, that I have. So we also have some steel. Oh, there's another copper down here. So what we have, I've listed it over here. How many we have? We have 3 iron facilities, 4 copper, 3 steel, 3 green circuits, 2 plastic, 2 red circuits, 1 stone or stone bricks, and 1 stone. Those are the generic materials. I'm going to call them common materials. They are built out here and they're built in modular setups. Currently, I'm only setting up to 1 of these because it actually proved to be just fine. If you look at it, well, even if some of it is kind of running out, it'll fill up quite satisfactory in terms of just keeping the belts up. Remember, if you have this one, it provides 16 full belts out. That means it's 16 times 37 inbound, so it's significantly less than 16 belts inbound, and that's also what comes in over here. If all the trains are actually here, the idea is that my idea originally was that each one of these would be hooked up to 2 mining locations, so that I'd have maybe 6 or 8 trains, actually 8 trains, that would then alternate, go out to wherever they could. But in the end, I just decided to just have a single one. Now I have 4 trains and 4 unloaders. That's not great. I should have had 4 trains and 2 unloaders, so there would always be one waiting to be unloaded. It's something that once I built it, I figured it was more important to use the modular design and just stamp it down. But it's something that I change later on. Let's look at the production to go through how that's produced. We're actually in the middle of this. This is how we do basically the smelting. So it's a very neat setup, just a blueprint, stamp it down, and it's just super nice. If we look at the steel, it's basically the same. You can see here it goes first iron smelting and then steel smelting out here. So it doesn't deliver as much, but yeah. It's pretty good. These trains are obviously also smaller because there's no reason to wait for such big trains inbound. And these are also just slowly unloading. Whenever one goes out, it just goes back to this location, fills up quickly since this is all idle, and comes back before the internal buffers run out. So that's working flawlessly. Somewhat flawlessly. It's working flawlessly 60% of the time, or maybe 80% of the time it's working flawlessly. The last 20%, there's some odd thing that's gone wrong. When I started reviewing this base, it turned out that there were like 3 trains that were just set to manual mode and blocking stations, so things were just eventually running out. That's just the way it is. Let's look at the different ways we are doing science in this setup. There are basically 2 ways of doing it. One is the direct train insertion here. This is the one we use for reds. We use it for, and I'm just gonna go over there and show you map view. We use it for greens as well. They are here. And in this case, we're getting much more iron in to convert into gears and then into inserters and belts. And they will be put out on a dedicated belt each on either side, and it actually works out really well. So that's a really neat design that we've come up with here. If you are wondering if I have all of these blueprints available, the answer is no, I don't, because I generally don't collect blueprints from my Let's Play series. they just keep changing all the time, and they're not really polished to the same level that my masterclass blueprints are. So therefore I prefer not to sort of publish them as blueprint books, especially during a let's play where things change and change and change. So the option is that patrons have the option of downloading save games, and I'm of course making save games available for patrons to download in the Discord. So that's one of the few perks that are available, is that you can always grab a save game from any one of my let's plays, from any one of my games, and then you can move on from there and just steal what you want. Those are the two. Direct insertion, we also have the blue one is direct insertion, but since blue is much slower, it's 12-second cycle instead of the 6-second cycle for green science, then we have to just have an extra train here. They're all just idling over here, waiting to be unloaded. Each train is 128,000 science, so it takes a while to unload those, and that's pretty good. So there's not much congestion in the network. But the idea here for this one is the same. We're getting, and I love these merges here, these merges where they just collide, especially when they have different colors. So we have red circuits coming in, we have sulfur coming in from the side, from the bottom, and we have engines coming out. And this is then where we go on to sort of the other design principle. Let's just move to the blue so we better can see it. When we looked at the red and green, there was raw materials coming into the side, from the side, but stuff like engines, they're not raw materials because they're only really going to be used for this one. Don't even start mentioning yellow science, we'll get there. And also sulfur, I was just expecting to have a full train, and this is kind of one of the third principles, is that if you just have a minuscule amount, just build it like that. It's just requiring some oil, and this oil will never run out anyway. We're just putting in, getting some oil, getting in here, we're happy. The red circuits, I'm defining those as being common materials, so they are the ones, they are shared between many different builds. Actually, not that many. Blue science and rockets, control units, and purple science. Those are the three things that need it. But the idea here is that if we look at something like this, let's hitch a ride on the train, because why not? This will then have a dedicated location. If something requires a bit more sort of thought and size, then it'll need a dedicated octagon for construction. Let me jump out and go in here. So here we have an octagon that then takes the raw materials in, steel plus iron coming in, and then forming a nice build here. Each of the builds are always going to be 12 beacon builds, or I would say max beacon builds. That's it's just the one that gives us the fewest moving entities, and that was one of the things that I wanted to work on in this base, is that I wanted to have as few having full belts and as few entities as possible, sort of practicing for my current let's play on Twitch, the one with a true megabase where we have to build really big. So I was just basically practicing here for that particular. Each of the things here actually contains a lot of small tricks, like this one where you get it out exactly on the right side that you want them to go on, and make sure that you consume evenly from both sides. Those are the small tricks that are there. This base is littered with small tricks. The next one we want to go take a look at is probably the yellow or the purple science. So let's jump to that. Purple science is by far the worst one, and it's obviously the worst one because it has a stupid amount of red circuits being demanded, stupid amount of steel being demanded, and a silly amount of rails. This is what you can see here: 16 lines of rails being unloaded and being merged into 8 full lanes of rails coming in here, and that's needed together with 4 lanes of furnaces and 4 lanes of productivity modules. Now it actually doesn't need this many, but this kind of merge, I am so absolutely in love with that merge, and therefore we decided to do that. But this one, it's let's see if we can see this one unload. No, it's to 47,000, so it takes a long time. But this is one of the more critical parts of the base, how we are actually keeping up with 8 full lanes of. It's very close. We'll just use the rate calculator. That's the mod doing that. And how many transport belts is this there? It's slightly more than 8. And that's when everything is fully operational, but I don't need it to be fully operational. I need it to be, see, it's 51. If I just scale down to 50, 50 is the corresponding to here, 3,000 per minute. That's our target. All right, so let's, the yellow one has one quirk that's different. So let's take a look at that one. Yellow science here does not look particularly interesting. Yellow science is more of a high quality products and lower quantity. but it's just filling up here. The one thing that I'd like to show you is how we're making the flying robot frames, because flying robot frames take so many different ingredients that it's really difficult. You'd have to break it down into engines, electric engines, and then robot frames, and that's just too big. So what I did instead was just, also this is part of a let's play, then it just makes sense to have different variations here, and so I opted for a setup here that is fully robotized. Basically, the trains come in, they unload to a certain amount in here in these boxes. You can see they are stacked up. It goes to 12,000, and yeah, that's the train here. And these are constraints, so they will not do it when it's more than 10,000. And this one is just my calculation of how much it actually needs of each of the different things. Here we have the green circuits as well. Also stop unloading when it reaches 10. And what is the last one inbound? Is that steel maybe? Steel perhaps? Steel perhaps? Yes, steel perhaps it is. This one is also unloading, but only at... Click. There, 2,500. Yeah, we don't want to overdo it here. And the one thing here that's odd is because in this build you need a tiny amount of copper, and that's only for the batteries. So all of the things in here are being built, and you'd think this is easy with just copy paste, but you have to manage the flow of liquids here. There are different types of liquids that are going in. You have to make sure that you can also do the processing here. I'm using coal liquefaction because then I can bring the coal in also from another location. So coal liquefaction is pretty good. I don't really care about how much I'm using here. So this is again one of those cases where I just find a co-location. These ones are like several million, and with productivity 100, then we have each time we mine once, we get 11 materials. So it's never ever gonna run out. Not a problem. Don't care. But these ones have to be split up in specific locations so that the flow is optimized as well, and then it makes the flying robot frames that will then be carried into the train. Now the only science that we have left to sort of review is the space science, so let's take a look at that one. Space science is actually simultaneously both the best and the worst of these. It has a really interesting design. Let me just step a bit away so we don't get all that roar coming straight in. I don't know why it's not been tuned so it doesn't make so much noise. Oh, but it's a rocket, it has to make noise. Yeah, but it's also a game where you can carry as many rocket silos as you want in your pocket. So let's not start using that kind of logic. The way that I've done it, I have synchronized these, and that means that the way I'm synchronizing it is by setting a condition on the one that inserts the satellites. So the satellites will only insert if it gets 2 green signals. One green signal comes if there is a total storage in these boxes of less than 4,000. The other storage comes that this one is simply counting up to 4,200, which is 70 seconds, and then it gets sent one signal. So this one should be always green, which is the one signal we have here, and then on top of that we get a flash of a second signal once every 70 seconds. This one takes about 64 seconds to prepare, so by just synchronizing at 70 seconds it seems good. And let's see if we get it. There we go, there it was, just sending it in, and we then run away. And in this case we also have, you can see here, we have separate trains coming in for each of the constituent components, as well as a dedicated train just for the satellites, and we have 2 of those even here. So that's basically how this works, and it works really well. Nothing out of the ordinary here. So that really summarizes the overarching design, the production, logistics. In terms of that, we'll just zoom out and just briefly explain the logistics part of it. The trains here, we can actually look up here. You see this is a very, very organized way of setting it up. You can see that, for example, the trains going into each of the 4 red circuit build, why do I call it red circuits? That's red circuit. This is copper. I have 10 of them each. For the green circuits, they are 8 each. For each of the iron, there's 10 each here, and so on and so forth. Also here for the plastic, there's 8 each, and into the steel, there's 10 each. So that is just a way for me to balance between each of those. The way that they're set up is, let's take a look at the steel. Maybe we don't want to stand next to a rocket just for the noisiness. Let's look at the steel here and look at the schedule that they have. They are pretty simple, this schedule. It basically just goes in here, and this train is then set up to 5. So this one has 10 trains. So I must be able to cater for all 10 trains being idle. That means 4 can go in, 5 can go into one, and 5 can go into the other one. Currently, I think it's 5 assigned to this, and maybe 3 or something assigned to the other one. If it ever comes to a point where these ones go out, then I believe that, for example, this one will redirect here if it works. There is a difference, and that's for the iron and copper. They have a stacker here where you can see these schedules. They go to the stacker, just passing through it just to make sure. This is actually a legacy product, and no, it still has its use because each of these locations only have 2. So what's really important is that I can have 2 here because I can have 1 train plus 1 right behind, 1 train plus 1 right behind. This was something I decided to try because I wanted to make sure that as soon as this train moved out, the next train was coming in. That works okay. But the thing is, then you have sort of a queue up here. That means if you have full trains, then as soon as one train goes out, another train goes in. Well, this train goes here, this one goes here, this one goes here. And it's just a lot of trains moving, sort of snaking its way by one stepping forward in the queue, next one stepping up in the queue. That's not something I really liked. But as we had built it, it was the way that it was going to be. But for newer designs, I changed it so that we have a more traditional setup here. This is the red circuits, and I really like this. This is basically red circuits are coming in here. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stackers. So that's why for these stations, I have a total of 7 trains assigned, and each station can take 4. So 4 plus 4, 8, but only 7 are assigned. So that's perfect. For these, if you look at that, there is the green circuits here. I just have lots of trains here and lots of stacked. It's a bit overkill here. I think I should only have had 2 for each, but I was just putting up the stuff that I had sized for because red circuits are not actually moving very fast. Also, here's another good idea and about sort of mirroring these builds. It also looks better both out here and in here. Looks better by mirroring instead of having them all the same way, and it also ensures that we're using each side of the belt evenly. Very nice. And these bands again, very nice builds. I like him very much. So green circuits, we could just take a look at it. It's basically the same. 16 lanes of copper coming in, 16 lanes of iron coming in, and just feeding in here, getting us 16 lanes of green circuits. Obviously, it's less than this coming in, but it still works quite well. Here I have again like the stackers or queues instead of stackers. Doesn't really work that well. It works okay, but I'm not as partial to this as doing this. This also takes up a lot less space and allows them to go parallel in. It turns out that the actual speed by which they go in, like from here, is not particularly important. So what happens now, we can see how the queue works. One goes in, the next one goes in, and this one can then move in here. And then another train will be summoned, has already been summoned, coming inbound soon. Here's the last bit of the production, and yeah, that's the uranium. This also leads into the power part of this. So what I've done is, and this might be a bit silly, I've simply mined some iron going in here to go up here to make some sulfuric acid that we're pumping in from some oil. The sulfuric acid goes up and helps mining this one, which will then go back into the base where we are located and thereby be processed. Also using this iron to get some iron plates that we'll need. Here I have this set up, and basically, yeah, we have a bit of Covarex. The Covarex is stalling, that's as it should be. I have no problem with this. Basically, we are slowly converting all of this into the uranium-235 at the rate that we need it here for production. So what we're seeing here is the production, and this one is consuming all of the inbound and then putting it in here. And as long as there is a constant consumption, which there is because it's nuclear power. Oh, I see a problem there. Oh, now everything is working much better. This is a bit of a hack. It doesn't look particularly pretty. I'm going to give you that. I don't have to comment on it. It's not pretty. But what it does is it takes out all of the uranium, used uranium going in here, puts it on belt, gets consumed here. It will actually just make sure that it will be consumed, goes into our long line fed here and into our pretty damn impressive nuclear power plant, including heat pipes and all. So what we have here, the one thing I've changed since I actually built it, and that was also a common suggestion, was actually to set up additional here. The compromise is these will not do anything, by the way. They're not going to do anything. They are just full temperature. They can't get rid of it. That's just the way it is. They are simply here to provide the neighborhood bonus for that one so that I can get a full utilization of everything. And what a beauty this is. This is providing 25 gigawatts of power in a nice compact little square. Just feed it in one line here, take out one line. It's producing one of these it's producing 0.74 per minute. So what is that, like every 45 seconds it produces, not 45 seconds, every 75 centiseconds. I don't know, that's not a thing. But they are just chugging along happily, doing everything. Everything has been tuned. Everything is working at ratio. It's working at ratio, at full utilization, no exceptions. If you are contesting that fact, you need to go back and do your math, and you can get this. And this is available in my masterclass blueprint for nuclear. I've updated that, so if you want to find it, if you want to implement this, it's super awesome, and it works. It works with a lot of hacking and smashing. Then every single one of these is working at the full utilization. Now, of course, it's not fully utilized, but if you make it fully utilized, it is working flawlessly at exactly the theoretical maximum that it should. So that is how easy it actually is to put power here. This was either this or just a stupid amount of solar power, and I didn't really like that. So we went for this option instead, and it's currently only operating at 14.8 gigawatts of power because that's what the base takes. And let's talk about performance. In the way we can do that is by looking at this, and the best way to do that is by going to where we have something black in background. Performance, this is the updates. You can see that it's running at 9 updates per second out of the 16.66 that was the threshold for start losing frames. And this is of course running on my i7, and it's while I'm recording at the same time, so that's also taking something. One way that you can test performance in a sort of very easy way is just crank it up to speed 10 and then see where it maxes out, where it cannot keep up anymore. So right now it can actually work at 1.5 speed, so that means that basically I have about 50% overhead remaining on the space to work with. I'm pretty happy about that. Let's scale that down again so that we are working on some reasonable numbers again. The part here that we're using it, circuit networks, I haven't used it for much deliberately. Transport lines, that is belts. That's quite low. Entity update, that's the one you can't do anything about because, well, that's the number of entities you have, assemblers, inserters. Those are the kind of things you can do something about it, but it's not. It's one that scales most linearly with your size of your base. Electric network, that's still that. I have a giant electric network. This is the one I'd like to be able to have smaller, but I don't know how I would do that. Trains, it's taking something because there are a lot of trains. If we look at it, there are a lot of trains, but they're not. They're big trains and they are very much idle. So this is. I feel it's okay with this trains taking that. So all of this, I'm quite happy with how it works. And yeah, there's absolutely no performance issues. So the last topic is just the lessons learned for you to take away from this base. And because I've been doing a lot of different results, like the direct to train, which I absolutely love, by the way. I think this is a cool way of doing it. And it also saves entities because fewer belts and intermediate stops and all kind of things. The one thing that first is don't do queues. Queues they're not great. They take a lot of space and they just kind of stuttering when they move forward. So I wouldn't recommend queues. Go with the good old stackers that we've been using for the last many years. But I wanted to do a test and trying it. So, well, sometimes you have a dead end. You explore something and go, oh yeah, that's why we don't use it. And that's now the conclusion again. Limiting trains is super amazing. It self-balances the network because all of these trains. Oops. Yeah. Please show me some tips and tricks. I think I need it. All of these trains are just set. Just go to copper in. All of these just go to iron in, and then it'll self-balance. However, that's one thing you have to be mindful of. For example, the worst problem I have is plastic is down here, and plastic is down here. So plastic will have a tendency to go into here if it's needed, and here if it's needed, because those are close by. If there are more stations open, it'll take the ones that are closest. If those are available, are already saturated, then it will send it in here. And only if all those are saturated will it send it in here. So that means if you are at all close to the capacity of your, let's say, common products, the ones that I'm producing outside the octagon, then you will have issues with the stuff that's furthest away. So the easiest way to solve that would be plopping down maybe up here, out here or something, making a plastic so that it would balance itself more evenly by simply proximity. But do pay attention to it. The other part is, because the base is so big, the travel distances from the plastic down here, up here, or I'd actually mainly say for stuff like copper that's being consumed in vast quantities for stuff like this, for example. We have 16 lanes coming in. This is not an error. This is simply because these have further to go. So therefore these belts unload faster. Okay, maybe it's slightly off. Maybe it's slightly off, honestly, because it should be 3K here. It should be like 500 or something. Yeah, don't start debugging. You're doing a base tour. But these are consuming way faster than they're consuming very fast. And when they're consuming very fast, then it's also more important that you cater to how many trains you want in. This one I've turned up to 3 trains. Normally I'd take 2 trains, but 3 is probably a good one for that one and for this one as well. Do I have 3 trains? Yes, but at this point we actually do not even have the 3rd train assigned. You can see it's white, so it's open. So no 3rd train has been assigned yet. That means all of that we don't have any idle trains available. This is at 35,000. This one's at 63, and there we go. Please show me that. Oh, look at that! It just got assigned to the one that we were just talking about. Sweet, 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 sweet. And now it is blue, so it is saturated. So this is the part. Limit trains is amazing. Use it for whatever you need. It completely, for me at least, has completely superseded or just replaced any need for LTN or TSM or any other mod or circuit-based network. Limit trains, amazing. But along the same lines, you want to oversaturate with your raw materials, because each time they move 64,000, or in the case of circuits, they move 128,000. Simply too much, and therefore just small discrepancy plus a long travel time means that you really want to oversaturate the network with raw materials and not just do it close by, and then it's probably fine. Another thing that I find is super important is try to make as even unloading of trains as possible. So this one is a good unloading because it tries to go as evenly as possible, while this is a bad unloading because this one will run out first because it fills up this one. So this one empties, empty, but I can't get a new train in until this one is empty. That means at the end, this is the only one unloading, and that means I'm actually only getting 1 belt in here at the very end, while this train here is unloading the last bits until the next one comes in. In specific high demand items, it can be an issue. In this case, it's mitigated by just putting in a buffer here, so that it will take the 2000 here before it changes. So I would say much better to do this kind of thing where you merge it in, balance it, merge it out, instead of the sort of merge it to the side. This is a symptom of sort of the earlier builds versus the later builds here. In this case, I still did it somewhat the same, but less so. But this one is more particular. Ooh, it's flickering at this situation. Yeah, so that's those are kind of the main findings of this base. Also, it's been super fun to make. It's been a bit challenging for me to make it interesting all the way through, because once you set up something, it becomes a lot of repetition when you make something modular. But it's been super fun to make, and I hope that all of you who have been following the series have enjoyed it as well, and hopefully learned a thing or two. I've certainly learned a lot of things from this, which is always a good thing. So that means this is going to be one of those base tours, and if you have your own base that you think is awesome for whatever reason, then do share it with me. I should have the time to start looking at some of the base tours bases that have been provided. I'd love to do more base tours because I learned something and you get your exposure for your base. Maybe you learned something based on my feedback as well. I'm going to wrap this one up here. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for following this Let's Play. Thank you for subscribing to the channel and liking the videos, commenting, all that stuff. I really appreciated the support. And there'll be more Factorio content, but not a Let's Play just around the corner. So stay tuned for more stuff coming here on the channel. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay effective.